at this beautiful park. So we're just loving it here. I wanted to talk a little bit, if I can get this set up. I'm going to talk a little bit about playing with mutes, or playing on the road, or playing traveling, and trumpet playing. That's something that I want to talk about because I've asked myself a lot of these questions and I have not found very many answers to it. So I've talked to a lot of professional trumpet players when they're traveling, and they talk about instances where they will play with mutes, like if they're in a hotel before the gig and they do some warm-ups. I know Brian Davis does a lot of those videos. Roger Ingram also talks about some of his warm-up routines in the hotel. But my question has always been, what if you're traveling for a week at a time or a couple months at a time? Some of you may know, but I live in a van now, so I travel full-time. And these are some things that have worked for me. I hope that they will work for you. A lot of the advice that I've learned for myself hopefully will help a lot of you guys if you're struggling with a lot of the same things. So, kind of going back to my last video, I talked a lot about overblowing and the 3 things to help fix overblowing. This is going to kind of be an extension of that video because it's going to talk a lot about mutes and like resistance when it comes to the horn. So the first thing I want to talk about is, when are the instances when you want to use a mute? Obviously you want to use them when the music calls for it. That's first and foremost. The second thing that I would say, I grew up in an apartment. So if you live in a place where there's a lot of people around and they may not necessarily love that you play a really loud brass instrument, that might be another situation where you will want to use a mute because you don't want to bother your neighbors and you don't want them to be upset with you. You can also set expectations with them of a time frame of when you want to practice. I know Aaron Washington talks a lot about that. Just being communicative with your neighbors. I never did that as a kid because I was like 12. So I either learned how to play with a mute, or I would just practice for like 15-20 minutes, and that's all that I would do. I always wanted to practice more. So if you want to practice more, if you're one of those people that want to practice more but you don't want to disturb your neighbors, these are some things that worked for me. I bought this thing. This is a Yamaha silent brass, and I don't have the cords attached to it. But the cool thing about the silent brass is you can plug in an auxiliary cord here and you can listen to yourself play. So your feedback is a little bit more direct than just a regular mute. A lot of the times when we play with a mute, we pop it in and we play. And we go, oh my gosh, that's so quiet. I can barely hear myself. I have to step on the gas. And now we're playing at 110%. If I was to pull the mute out and play like that, which I'm not going to do because it sounds horrible, it's like way too loud. We don't need to be doing that. And if you're trying to play at that kind of volume with a muted, when you take it out, it's going to feel even harder to do that because you're going to be so open in your aperture. Your aperture is going to be so big that it's not going to be focused anymore, and you're not going to be able to ascend. You're not going to be able to do octave jumps. You're not going to be able to do any of the stuff that you can originally do. How do I know that? Because I did it. So I played with this thing for a long, long time without the cords in it. If you take the volume down, a little bit, you don't really have to worry about opening up your aperture too much. It won't be too open. It'll stay nice and focused. And even if you need to play any of the upper register, just keep the volume down. Because you'll learn how much air you need to use for those notes, and I think it's a lot less than we initially think. So, if you want to practice more, I'd recommend playing with a mute, but understand that you don't need to play as loud as you think you do. I feel like a lot of the advice that I'm going to give, most of this is for myself, is just to play a little bit quieter. If we can really harness the low end of our playing, or the quiet end of our playing, our big and powerful stuff will sound even bigger. So If you're playing with a mute or you need to play with a mute, just play a little bit quieter. There's a lot of different mutes out there. It kind of just depends on which one you want to use. Or even with some of the practice mutes that offer the least amount of resistance, you still want to make sure you're playing quieter than you think you are. So keep that in mind. The last thing I'll talk about that I want to touch on for today is when you are playing with a practice mute or some sort of like silent brass or a mute in general, is I interpret it as if you play an hour and a half on a practice mute or with a practice mute in, that's basically the equivalent of you playing like 3 hours open, like without a mute in, because there's that much resistance. So understand that you're going to tucker out faster because there's more resistance, and that's okay. It's okay if you tucker out a little bit faster. So take more breaks. If you want to practice for a little bit longer and you're playing with the mute in, you've got to take more breaks. I was playing in a hotel yesterday, and I was practicing some range studies and just some like soft air attacks in the upper register to try and make sure I can focus those and make sure that I'm not blocking off my sound. And I would play 3 or 4 notes and I just felt super gassed. And I was like, man, what's going on? So I like tried to force it a little bit. And I was like, wait, I'm like feeling way too tired. Just take a break. Take like 5 minutes off. Watch a video or something. Like watch a clip of your show. Like whatever it is, just we have to make sure that we're resting a little bit more, especially when we're playing with mutes. If we don't rest enough when we're playing with mutes, it's going to be very detrimental and you're going to start working backwards rather than forwards. So I don't want to keep lecturing. I hope this is helpful. If you are struggling with any of these things and you need some help and you need some advice, let me know. I'm like more than happy to like answer questions, to hear more advice. If you found things that work for you while you're traveling and you use a mute or you use some other type of advice or device, let me know. I want to hear those things because I love doing this and I just want to keep doing it. So let me know. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, post them down below, and I'll be back at you with another video.